with the big picture, WVKC, the voice of Knox, 90.7 HD2 Galesburg. This is the show where I interview people about their passions and their life in general. And today I'm joined by Alex Kellog, who is a senior this year, I believe is a double major in music and psychology.
Yeah, that's correct.
And has been a devoted member to Improv Club for quite a
Yes.
while. I seem to have a theme of inviting people who are in improv, but that's all right. To start off with, do you want to just give like a sort of icebreaker, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I can try to do that. So yeah, as Matt said, I'm a senior, double majoring in music and psych. So I'd say my main interest in psychology is mental health and sexuality, and then my main interest in music is violin performance, I suppose. And yeah, as Matt mentioned, I've been like really active in improv clubs since getting to Knox. So I was a theater kid in high school, but I sort of left behind staged theater in favor of improv because I had a lot more fun doing it when I got here. Um, yeah, what else would you like to know?
Well, we can start off with just what kind of were the steps that brought you to Knox? What were sort of the decisions that went into coming here?
Sure. Oh, it's been a while. I have to think about that. So I found schools that I was interested in just through like Google searches of what with categories that I thought were important. So like small class sizes. I was looking for liberal arts if like logistically and financially possible. And I found Knox among other schools. And when I got accepted and eventually came to an admitted students day, I like ran into this girl named Kati who was a former camp counselor, and I'm from Ohio, so I was not really expecting to like run into anyone I knew at this school in Illinois. But we had actually been pretty close when I had attended that camp. It was a like very like emotionally intense youth leadership camp that I went through and eventually taught at. But anyways, I ran into Kati, and she like sort of took me out of like the hokey little tours that everyone goes on, and she like showed me like kind of a more realistic view of what Knox is like, and I got to like actually hang out with her and her friends, and I just felt so comfortable. And it was so amazing to finally like meet people like as weird and weirder than me, because in high school I was kind of used to being like one of the freaks, and coming to Knox I'm pretty average, which is nice. It's a nice change to not feel like so different in a bad way, and even on the opposite side of things to feel different in a good way, to feel special. And I got sort of a sense of that feeling, that safety and comfort and belonging, based on that day I spent here with Kati and her friends. And she graduated that year, so I never actually got to attend school with her, but I got to, that sort of, got my toes in the water. That gave me kind of some grounds to go forward from. And yeah, it's based on just what a positive experience that was, and the fact that my other admitted students days at other schools were very average, and then Knox like happened to like give me the best like scholarships and stuff like that, so it was like logistically the best option, and it was like the school I wanted.
Yeah. That's a very common theme. A lot of people will say like, oh, other colleges have their thing, but like Knox is kind of special in it. But yours with Kati, yeah. That's a unique experience. What sort of things do you think you were made aware of that people taking on those normal tour groups were not made aware of when it comes to Knox culture?
Basically, like, I feel like in the normal tours that you get, it's just essentially the tour guide is encouraged to just make Knox seem like 100% positive in every way, and to like illustrate Knox as being just this perfect school, but there's no such thing as that, and I think that's I just think that's unrealistic. So what made this different was Kati like told me all the problems she has with the school, and they were all things that I was like willing to deal with, and I felt like I was lucky to have like a more real view of what I was getting myself into.
I feel like that's a lot of why people do end up dropping out.
Yeah, exactly.
Is they come in with a certain perception of what the school is, and then it's not that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you had a very different experience with your high school experience versus your coming to Knox experience. You mentioned that it was a bit to do with like feeling different in a positive way. What do you think that was just the people, maybe the level of maturity, right? Because college kids are more mature than, like, where do you think that difference comes from?
I don't think it's, like, it might be partially maturity. It's because, everyone tends to have no clue who they are in high school. And then, theoretically, we, over time, like, come into a sense of ourself and our purpose and stuff like that. But, so, I mean, part of it was just getting over like growing pains that everyone goes through, but it's also, I think, like Knox really we tend to really like celebrate identities that are normally a like huge disadvantage to occupy. So yeah, so hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Ohio is like a northern state, right? Typically, we associate like behavior of shunning people who are particularly in LGBTQ communities with southern, but it's all over.
It's everywhere, and it's not. I don't think saying it's more prominent in like the South is really fair, because I think it's just like there are really liberal parts of the South and stuff like that, and there's really conservative parts in the North. So it's kind of
it's really disingenuous to just categorize it like that. Well, I guess just to jump into this, was a lot of the reason your difference have to do with your identity as a trans person? Is that or did that only come about in college?
That was probably a huge part of it. Yeah, it's hard to say, because I think, like, okay, let me get my thoughts together.
Of course.
So, when you're transgender and like don't have the like quote unquote normal like cis experience to compare it to, you just are you're sort of observing everyone grow up in the correct quote unquote way, and you're trying to like imitate it, even though deep down like this does not apply to me. So like your sense of self just becomes really convoluted, and when you're like a child especially, but even an adolescent, like you just don't have language to describe those feelings. And so wait, I sort of lost track of your question.
It was a lot of the sort of differences that were looked on negatively in high school. Did that have a lot to do with that identity?
Yes, so I would say looking back, yes, that is the case, that it did have a lot to do with that, but like not in high school, like not having access to like the language to describe what I was experiencing, to describe my gender identity accurately, and then in the cases where I did have the language for it, I just wasn't ready to use the language to describe me. I think it's hard to say if it was specifically like being trans that like accounts for all of those, accounts for that difference, because I think it's more just, I think it's less to do with the transness and more to just do with like the humanity of like not, or like the human need to like fit in, and having kind of feeling like you have no ability to do that in high school, and then coming into a sense of like, okay, I can actually fit in, you know. Or like in the cases where I can't fit in, like why the hell would I want to? You know?
Yeah, like who cares? And I think what you hit on there with the acquiring words and just the language is a big part of just college in general. Like I'm only a second year, or close, like spring term second year, but like I've been able to formulate more of my thoughts better, and I think that's such a great advantage to all of that.
And it really, like, it's a reminder of just like what of like how profoundly like privileged we are to like be in college, you know. And it's like humbling. So yeah, I try not to it's easy to become sort of like arrogant when you have like all this eloquent language to describe your experiences and your emotions, but like you should, you know, share that education with other people rather than you know, patronize them for not having it.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid point, because I mean, this is sort of just a topic of like at Knox there tends to be this like thing where Knox people will very much look down on Galesburg people, like people
which
in the
is
town.
that really pisses me off.
It
like is infuriating,
because
and like the people who are most adamantly talking down to Galesburg people like have literally never talked to one. They've never like had a conversation with a person who lives in Galesburg, so they just have this sense of like townies being these like like evil little goblins that like are trying to sneak into Knox's like proud liberal campus, and it's just such bullshit. Like there should not be such a clear divide between these two groups, and that's not the case in like most other schools. Like most other schools, like the surrounding town of a college is like really like tight knit with like the two communities are really tight knit and it's almost one, and that's just not the case with Knox.
I here, from what I understand, I mean, I've talked to Joel Estes a bit about it, but like I think it's a case of a lot of people in Galesburg had like their factories went away, a lot of the jobs went away, and meanwhile Knox is like prospering, and there's also a huge political difference between the two organizations or two groups, and it just creates this divide that's hard to cross. But I think we have to cross it, because like otherwise it's just not going to be a nice place to be for either of us. For sure. Going on from you coming to Knox, were you pretty sure about what organizations you were going to join coming in, or did you kind of take that in stride?
I had really no clue. So when I came to Knox, I was going to be my goal was to get like an English and education double major and be like a high school English teacher. I wanted to do theater, and I wanted to sing in the choir, and I wanted to keep playing violin kind of as a hobby. And then what ended up happening is I wasn't enjoying like any of the singing I was doing. I wasn't enjoying my like English lit classes or the education classes. I was loving my violin lessons. That was like the like consistent highlight of my week, was just working on my music. And you know, to be honest, I wasn't even that crazy about the music classes I was taking, but like there's this perk of being a music major where you can take up to 2 lessons a term for no fees, and normally that would cost $600 extra to take 2 lessons in a term. So I, you know, signed this like intent to declare a music major, mostly to take advantage of those free lessons, and then I stuck with it because I was just like so happy with where I was going with playing violin, and I felt like I was like discovering more of myself like through this instrument, and it was becoming less of I feel like classical music and classical instruments, which I would generally classify violin as, there's this sense of like superiority and like distance from it, and I feel like you're kind of like put on this pedestal for playing like a classical instrument or classical music, but that being put on that pedestal actually becomes like a disadvantage because you're removed from reality. You're just not relatable at all. And so that was kind of my relationship with the instrument in high school, but then I was discovering like all these kind of possibilities that I could do with the instrument, and I was I was singing and playing violin, which I'd never experimented with. I was improvising. I was doing jazz, stuff like that, and it was becoming like a part of me rather than just this thing that I played. And if I told people I play the violin, they'd be like, "Wow, that's so impressive." But like, I don't want to be impressive. I want to make people feel things as I'm playing music, and I want to feel things myself as I'm making music.
That's really amazing. I think just the ability, like, music really is. And I know what you mean. Like, every time I think of violin players or cello, first thing that comes to mind is like this elegant suit, playing the violin, right? It's what first comes to mind.
And that's normal. Like that's what I feel like comes to mind for most people.
But it's just another instrument.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
a way to express yourself.
Yeah, it really makes me mad. And there's a whole other conversation to be had about like, the glorification of classical music when classical music is this like extremely inaccessible art form.
Yeah. Well, we might end up touching on that depending, but I'd like to talk a bit about your journey into really loving music. Was that sort of a purely self-discovery thing, or did you have like mentors involved in that who kind of emboldened your love for it?
Louise Pole was the violin teacher when I came to Knox. She retired at the end of last year, and there's a new teacher. She's amazing, but Louise like really made a huge impact, as well as Carolyn Suda, who's like a cello professor here, and she conducts one of the groups I'm in, and just working closely and often privately with these two very accomplished musicians who are also very down to earth and who had no egos to speak of. They were truly making music out of love and expressive need rather than like to impress people, and so I had like the privilege of playing in a string quartet with Carolyn Suda when I was a freshman, and I like every rehearsal I just would learn so much more than I could ever put into words, and the rehearsals would be like 1 to 2.5 hours, but they would fly by and feel like they were 10 minutes. They were because it was just so much fun, and I wasn't used to enjoying myself like playing violin. It just kind of felt like a chore.
Was there a key moment where you found you were enjoying? Like, do you remember the moment, or was it a very slow progression?
I mean, the key moment was more recent, and I don't even know if there was a single moment, but it was more gradual, because I got so my sophomore year I was preparing for a violin recital with a friend of mine, Sam Burgess. The two of us were gonna each play some big like solo pieces for this like Knox Galesburg Symphony sponsored recital. It was kind of like a big deal, and I was really excited. And I was over the months leading up to it, I was just getting this like pain in my like wrist and my arm and my fingers that was just like practically getting worse every day, and it was just building and building, and then I would take a few days off and it would get better, but then I'd come back to it and the pain would be immediately back to where it was before, and then in a few weeks before the recital, I was practicing, and it was just like the pain was so bad I couldn't like put my fingers down on the string because it just hurt so much, and eventually like I figured out it was tendonitis, but it was after like all these like bad doctors who didn't know what to tell me, because like 99% of doctors have never like treated a musician for pain. Like if you have like a sports injury, like it's very easy to find someone who can treat you, but for like musician injuries, you need like a niche like specialist, like someone, you know, in a city or whatever, and that was just not accessible. So I eventually found out it was like tendonitis, but it was like all this trial and error and just having no clue what to do. So I by the end of it, I had taken like a full year off of playing violin, and it was so, and then like I wasn't able to do that recital, which was like very disappointing, and through that whole year I just had to like, it was very emotional because I had lost my at the time my sole means of like expressing myself, because I was just so deeply confused about like who I am, and I was still in the closet at the time, but like I didn't really know I was in the closet. I just felt like something was off, but I wasn't sure.
That was your sophomore year?
Yeah. It was like halfway through my sophomore year to halfway through my junior year. And so but it like forced me to go through this like very, very like painful kind of growth experience, and I had to like just constantly be like looking inwards, and I had to find like a reason to frankly like stay alive, because I had like lost like pretty much the one thing that was, you know, keeping me here consistently day to day, because I was just very sad all the time, and that was gone. So I was like I don't know who I am as a human being without like this instrument. So then that over the year I like eventually like added a psychology major compulsively, which I wouldn't have done if I hadn't gotten tendonitis, and like I you know, addressed and got therapy for like my anxiety disorder, which like I hadn't known I had. I just had this generalized sense of being like frazzled all the time, and it ended up being so helpful. And when I eventually was ready to start playing again, and I had like gotten, you know, a tendonitis diagnosis, and I like was working with different teachers who like were helping me change my technique to make it so I wasn't going to re-hurt myself, like re-damage anything. I, you know, started playing again, and, you know, life was good.
Life was good. Yeah, so part of what sounds like you did when you were going through that rough time was, I mean, you tried at a psych major, you just added was that just completely compulsory, or did you have sort of an interest?
Pretty much. I mean, I definitely had an interest. Like, it wasn't a random choice, but like I'm a very how do I describe it? Like I need to like have, you know, big goals to be working on at all times. It like keeps me sane. It like keeps me grounded to like have something that I'm working towards, something like concrete in the future. And so since I had lost music, I was like, I need something to like pour myself into. And psych was, I mean, first of all, genuinely interesting, but another appeal of it was that it had nothing to do with music, you know? And so I just wanted to like get my mind off of like music, because I just had such a like painful relationship with it at the time, because like all I wanted to do was like make music, but like I wasn't able to. So yeah, that was the main appeal of psych, was that it just had nothing in common with what I had done before. So yeah.
Was there a particular professor that got you into psych at all? Was it?
I definitely kept the major because of Heather Hoffman and Sarah O'Brien.
I have not had them yet, but
should.
Psych is a major. It's actually the major I've declared, so I'm excited to be doing that.
Yes, it's a wonderful major. It's a really good department.
Yeah. So for you was the moment that you realized that music was something you truly enjoyed, like that wasn't just like a chore or skill?
I totally lost track of
well,
your
I was
question.
Just, was
yeah,
that
so
when you
like
came
after
back
all that shit, that like, horrible year that I don't like to think about, I came back to playing the violin, but it was very, very frustrating at first because I could literally only play like 2 minutes a day, and then I would like ice my forearm, do these stretches, do these ball exercises with like I had this like thing that I would have to like squeeze
kind of
and
like
then
a
extend
stress
my
ball almost,
kind of a stress ball, but with these weird straps on my fingers.
Mm.
And I was spending more time doing these like rehabilitating exercises than I was actually playing the violin, and it was like, this is not even like worth it, you know, like this is so frustrating. And I sounded terrible because I had taken a year off, you know. But after like as I was going through that, I was like, I can't keep thinking about music the same way I have been, because I was really approaching it from trying to be really good at violin. Like that was essentially what was motivating me to practice each day. It was like, I want to be good at this instrument. But it's like, that's like when you're so limited in the amount you can play, and you know, being good by these like very high like recital classical violin standards is kind of out of the realm of possibility. I decided I needed to stop playing these like, you know, crazy difficult like, you know, virtuoso pieces and just start playing like music that I really like loved to play. And so I like partially went like back to my roots by like playing you know, like the Bach partitas and sonatas, which are kind of the foundational pieces that most like classically trained violinists play, but also like focusing more on like pop music and messing around with like ways to just make it more fun and to you know, effectively keep working on music while like limiting the amount of time that I was physically holding my instrument. So it just, the whole process really forced me to be creative, which I think has ended up being useful. And it also, now that I am, you know, recovered from tendonitis, like knock on wood, I feel like I am playing for more of the right reasons, and I'm not really playing to be good anymore. You know, I'm playing because I like want to.
Because you enjoy it, but which is, I think, the maybe perhaps a bit cliched, but is the, I think, nice true way of like you should be enjoying what you're doing.
Exactly.
The story of you persevering through that is, I think, very inspirational to me in particular. Just because, I mean, it's a very human story. Like, I've, in interviewing people, heard similar, like, the perseverance through a rough time in your life. But I find it interesting that for you, it wasn't just discipline or perseverance. It was you needed to find a new way of looking at it.
Yeah, that was really the key.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. But I think it's also very true because, you know, if you're not enjoying anything you're doing, or if you have the wrong mindset, you're not going to get very far either.
Yeah, and part of it, like, I was also, like, when you're playing to be good, like, or when you're doing anything just to be good at it, that really boils down to, like, shame. It's like you're trying to escape the shame of being bad at something. And it's like, you shouldn't, if you're a shitty violinist, or if you're a shitty artist, like, you're still an artist, and if you like enjoying what you're doing,
that
like,
should be enough.
Go you, like, keep doing it. And you can be like you can have like the best technique in the world. You can be like so perfectly polished and do everything right within an art form, but if you don't have like any soul to it or whatever, it's like, who cares?
Who cares at all? Yeah, I experienced that actually in a lot of ways with improv, because there was a period with improv where I was like, I want to be really good at it, partially because I wanted to impress Josh and all that sort of thing.
Stop.
But no, it was this big thing, and then I just kind of reached a point where I went, I would rather just enjoy being with friends doing this thing, and I was like, I'll improve just by doing it. I don't need to focus on whatever it is. And
also, if you're focused on like being good at it while you're improvising, like that anxiety like takes takes your mind out of like the scene.
Yeah.
And then you're only half there, you know.
That's been the interesting thing with like me and Simone being co-presidents now. It's like anytime we are up for a thing now, I feel like I feel sort of tension.
Oh,
like,
girl,
yeah.
that's so real. I like low-key hated being president. Not really, but like I loved it. There were lots of positive things about it, but like every time I improvised, I felt like if this is not funny, like I'm gonna be so humiliated or whatever because like I'm the president or whatever. But like it does not matter. No one's holding you to any different type of standard. Like just like you just have to force yourself to enjoy it, honestly.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like if people see you having fun,
yeah, right,
that's more of a strong impact than you maybe keep putting crow perfectly together or whatever it may be.
Yeah, also it's so much more impressive to see someone like who makes mistakes and handles them with grace and learns from them rather than someone who just never makes mistakes.
It's like, made a mistake. Yeah. That's certainly true. Speaking of improv, what was that journey to you starting it? Like you came to Knox, you realized you wanted to pursue music. Mm-hmm. Where did improv fit into?
My first term at Knox, I was just like, and this is common to most, or not to most, but to a lot of freshmen, I was like so lost, so so sad and so lonely and so like hopeless, and a big part of that was just like feeling really dissatisfied with my like social life. I just felt like I had not fallen into the right group of friends, and I felt like I was being fake all the time, trying to like impress these people because I was insecure about the friendship, and then just, you know, there was no like intimacy or whatever in my life, and then I joined, I came to my first like improv rehearsal like probably week 6 of my freshman year, around then. So like after the first show had already happened, and after they had been after the group had already kind of established itself, yet despite that, like I immediately was like welcomed into it, and like very genuinely. It didn't, because I've had lots of experiences where I feel like everyone is being like overly welcoming in this almost like condescending kind of way, and it just it like makes my skin crawl. But like it was just like, it wasn't forced. It was just like, you're here now, like it's so good to have you.
Notice someone new's here, you ask who they are,
but I wasn't
right?
like put in the spotlight or whatever.
Yeah,
it was just like, it was natural.
In the natural thing of like, someone new is here, you want to be like, hey, who are you? Like, you're here.
Exactly.
Like, it's very genuine.
And I think the first scene I did, like, you know, everyone in the club was like laughing hysterically at me, and I was like, okay, like this is a nice little confidence boost. I'm funny as hell. And like then I think I've been to like pretty much every rehearsal since then, because I just had such a good time. And having that like social connection to fall back on, and like, you know, improv rehearsals as sort of landmarks in each week, where it's like, even if I'm miserable, I know like these 2 hours on Wednesday night like will be fun. And like sort of gaining a friend group through that, because freshman year I made all my friends through improv. That was sort of the main reason not the main reason, but that was a huge component of why I like kept coming back. And yeah, I think just having a friend group and having like a fun hobby that I just really loved is like the reason I didn't end up like transferring, which is what I had been planning, like
those like first couple weeks. That's I know with my freshman year and this current freshman year, and just observing freshmen in general, it's like there is this feeling of like they don't know who to be with yet, and often that first group you end up with isn't actually the group you want to hang out with. It's sort of finding your place.
And there's this pressure to pretend you're really happy, because freshman year at college is supposed to be like the best year of your life or whatever. But that's bullshit.
Yeah,
it's a really, like, your 20s are just confusing and hard as hell. Like, that's unavoidable.
This year's been far better than my freshman. Like,
good.
Yeah,
each year has gotten better for me. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that's the track people follow. But I mean, there's going to be ups and downs in anything. You came to improv. You made your friend group there, which I have found is a common thing with a lot of improv folks. Yes. In fact, this year, I give them crap about it all the time, but like this freshman group was already so close friends. It was, they know this now. They know this now. They'll tell me like
most freshman shit I've
ever
seen.
I was like, they'll even let me know. I'm like, they're like, yeah, we were a lot. And they still are a lot to this day, but like they've in a good way. Like they're charming at this point. When at first they were like, oh my god, this is terrifying. No, they're a lovable bunch at the very least. And so you came into the club. What inspired you to want to pursue leadership roles in the club, and what was that first leadership role you pursued?
Oh, I was like secretary the first year, which is what I should have been all 3 years because it was so much fun. But then I went up to president my junior year, and I think the reason I did it was just because like I was pretty confident I would be good at it, and I cared enough to like be willing to put in the time, and so I was like, okay, I'll do this. And then that was too much to do 2 years in a row, so I stepped down to vice president.
I currently plan to just do it. I plan on kind of doing the Josh maneuver where you're president and you're just a retired hermit. When Josh talks about that election, he mentioned it was like he felt like it was almost like he had to, in a way, where like
that was a factor as well. Yeah, because like I don't remember who else was running against me and Josh. I think it was me and Josh versus like me and someone else. So I was like president either way, which was like
which is a big deal.
Yeah.
But so there's definitely that feeling though. This year I feel like, gosh, were you there during the crazy nominations?
It was me and Nadine. That's it. Sorry, go ahead.
Were you there for the crazy nominations this year?
Yeah,
and just people nominating.
Wait, no, I was not there for nominations. I was there for elections.
But
like, I was like, damn,
that's a a lot of people.
I'm not mad that I missed that.
Yeah, Josh's face was priceless throughout. I was just like, yep. I think it's a freshman thing.
Yeah,
where you
just the over-enthusiasm.
Yeah, you're like...
It's cute.
It is cute, and I was sort of being like, oh, that was kind of me. Like, you're flattered to be nominated for anything, and so you'll take anything. Whereas now, like this year, if I'd be nominated for something, I'd be like, no, I don't want that. Sorry.
Yeah, fair.
It's such a big thing. So you were saying you would rather have been secretary for...
Oh, yeah, because, like, that's my ideal type of leadership position where it's like I'm mostly in the background, just sort of
writing the minutes.
I was just sort of taking the minutes, being like really snarky, and then I was there as backup whenever people needed anything, but there was not much responsibility, so it was like that was nice.
That was nice.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that while being the president was difficult and had a fair share of negatives to it, right? Like I know the ones I hear about is you don't get to play as many games.
That's for sure. I mean, a lot of the negative aspects just, I think, came from my personality. Just being, like, very, very, very socially anxious, which is it's difficult to have a role like that when you're, like, socially anxious because, like, everyone's looking at you and you, like, you have this, like, heightened self-awareness and it's really stressful. Just I had all these like I was just way too like hard on myself. Like whenever I would make a mistake, I just would catastrophize it, even though it's a college club in Galesburg, Illinois. Like it does not matter. But like I made it so much bigger than it needed to be in my head. But that again, like similar to like what we were talking about earlier with like getting like tendinitis and having to change my relationship with violin, like it was a useful like learning experience because like when you're forced to, because really like the only way to overcome any type of anxiety is to like face the object of your anxiety and realize that you will survive, you know.
Yeah.
So it ended up being helpful.
Was Josh a okay co-president?
He was fine. He was great, but I was just always like bitter because it felt like he was the president and I was just there, you know.
Yeah.
Because like Josh is much more outgoing and personable than I am. I tend to be very reserved and like I don't tend to approach people like they sort of have to approach me, and that's not because I'm like a bitch, or hopefully not, but it's just because I just don't.
It's different ways of interacting with social groups.
In general, I'm too like kind of nervous to like approach people unless they're like really close friends. But that's not the case for Josh. So everyone, especially like the freshmen, like we're just really drawn to Josh because he has like that kind of magnetic personality, whereas like I like absolutely don't. So there was definitely some jealousy there from me, but like that jealousy is not his fault. Like he's great, you know.
For sure. And I mean, I find it interesting that you say that because I know, particularly with this freshman group, a lot of them really love you. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I think I hear about it all the time. So
that's so cute.
You know, but it is that thing. Like I think it's hard for two people to interact with each other in like any circle, right? Like it's like someone has to make that first step, and who's gonna make that first step, and there's this weird social dance that's had often.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating because like people have, I don't know if this is like generalizable, but I've had like multiple people like say they either find me intimidating or like used to find me intimidating before they got to know me, which is just like so ironic because I'm like literally intimidated by everyone. I'm just intimidated by the world. So it's so silly that it's like two people being intimidated by each other keeps them from interacting, you know,
with each other.
Even though neither one of them perceives themselves as intimidating. But whatever.
It's just, I mean, as a psych major, I'm sure you're somewhat aware. Like, people are weird in that regard.
Yes. As a psych major, people are weird.
Yeah. Like, but I say that funnily because when I interviewed Frank McAnder, he was like, I avoided those questions. I quickly learned I should because he would just be like, I don't know that. Yeah. Like, I'm not an expert. You know, I asked him a bit, like, are there any general things that you get for being a psych major? He's like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, and I'm sure majors of all sorts get all sorts of things. Like if you're a music major, I'm sure people come up to you and go like, oh, could you teach me to play this or that? And it's like not my
actually
expertise.
Several people have asked me to like teach them to play piano, and like I play like 2 songs on the piano. Like I would not be a good teacher.
Yeah. But it's just, I guess when you have that title, right, people come to you. Was there some similar with titles, like you having the title of president? Did you ever feel like people were coming up to you asking you things that you just didn't have the answer to?
Yeah, definitely. I can't think of examples, but I definitely remember that feeling.
That's the thing. I'm thinking, like, I feel like someone's going to walk up to me and be like, hey, how can I improve? And I'd be like, I
don't know.
I don't know. Keep having fun. Keep doing what you're doing, I guess. Because it's just hard to, I mean, we're all not too far away in age.
That's the secret.
And it's also got to be weird of like, this is the thing I find weird with exec roles in general, is you're no older than most of the other people there. In fact, a lot of the people there have maybe been in improv longer than you or what have you.
But at the same time, like when you're, you know, in your teens or 20s, like 1 year is like a huge difference. It's like a world of difference. Especially like well, not especially, but like a good example is, you know, the difference from 20 to 21. Like in the one case, you're like not legally an adult. Whereas so it's just
both me and Trish are fastly approaching that marker. May 20th will be our 21st.
And then when you get there, it's like, okay, nothing is different because it's one day. But, you know, if you could magically jump between like Matt on his 20th birthday and Matt on his 21st birthday, you would not be able to have a conversation with your old self. Like it was just, it's so different.
So you had that experience. Well, I guess I should talk about what were some of the positives. I know we mentioned the negatives. What were some of the positives of like being president of improv?
Oh, I got to pick the show games. I got to decide what we did on rehearsal. So like we never played the games I hated, like Little John game. We never did it. But we like always did the games that like I love and the games that Josh loves. The shows were so fun because I got so much attention and I got to like introduce the club. And it was nice having like people, you know, reach out to me when they were like, oh, we want improv club to blah 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 blah, and they would, you know, reach out to me, and I was like, okay, like I'm the Jush. So yeah, it was great. Yeah. It was great in a lot of ways.
And it's got
just not for me overall.
Yeah. And that's definitely the thing I think me and Simone will be feeling out as we go. Yeah. That sort of thing like that. So far so good, but you know, and I think our big thing right now is just communication and making sure we know how the other feels. Yes. So what's going on. Definitely. Yeah, you mentioned that you had a major friend group in the improv club. Has that major friend group sort of shrunk as people have graduated? Has it?
Yeah, because I mean, let me see. Other than like Josh, I don't know if there's anyone who I got close to freshman year in improv club that I'm still really close to. Well, Evan is like one of my best friends, but he joined pretty late freshman year. It was mostly Carly, JC, and Michelle who have all like graduated. They were like, I was very tight with them freshman year.
Yeah, and you're going to be graduating, much to the dismay of many of us. You will be graduating here soon.
I'll still be around. Yeah, for the next year.
Are you post-backing? Really?
If I get accepted, I'm post-backing. And if not, then I'm just working in Galesburg.
All right. So I guess that goes into, like, what are your aspirations after your Knox College experience?
I want to... So I don't have the full life plan set out, and I don't think anyone should at this age.
Yeah. At
least not, like, concretely. But... over this next year, I'm gonna make my first album. That's my big goal. I don't know if it'll happen, but I've been getting much more into like composition and songwriting, and I really want to like crack down and take that more seriously and start just writing more music. Because I won't have as many opportunities to like perform next year. So I want to like find some way to keep growing as a musician, and I am hoping to, if for my career, I'm hoping it's going to be more, I mean, like, assuming my first album doesn't blow up and make me famous, I'm going to, like, hopefully have a more psychology-focused job, so I'm thinking case management would be, like, kind of my entry into psych, and then from there I would either continue with that or go to grad school for like to become like a therapist or a counselor.
Yeah. All right. So like case management would just be like, what does that look like?
Case management is essentially you like you work under like a supervisor, and you drive to clients' houses, and you assist them. It's very broad. It's a really broad job category, but it could take a lot of forms.
That's interesting. All right. This is a fun question. If you were to describe in maybe a sentence or two the difference between freshman year you and now not graduating because post-bac, but like now approaching the end of your fourth year, what would that difference be in like a sentence or two?
Okay.
Just as like a fun question.
Sure. Freshman year, Alex. Sad, confused, fragile. Senior year, Alex. Icon, legend, superstar.
All very true adjectives to describe you very much. Part of why I was so excited to have you on. I mean, you're a senior, and I mean, I feel like only in recent times been able to like talk to you or like you know, that sort of thing, for whatever social weirdness that would be. But you're definitely one of the people in improv, at least, I very much looked up to. I mean, I guess that comes with the co-president title, but like as you as a person as well. And I guess not to get too hard, but like I'm pretty sure you were like the first like trans person I'd ever really met. Mostly because I come from like Southern Illinois, where that's not as widely accepted and that sort of thing, which was also a big experience for me. So you were a very good first person, trans person to meet, very truthfully, but also just a good person in general, despite titles and things like that. I suppose my follow-up to that would be, so you specialized in therapy, right? That was your thing with psych, right? Like,
I mean, I would say like clinical stuff is a big interest of mine, and I've tried to take clinically focused classes, but like I don't think I can say therapy has been like a focus, because you can't really conveniently have a focus at Knox, I feel like.
Oh, really?
In psych, it's more of like you take the classes that interest you most, but it's been a big breadth of subjects. But therapy has definitely been like one of the more interesting ones to me.
I know senior research is always so huge, but kind of what was your senior research about? Because I always find that really fascinating. It was,
okay, so it was about mental health experiences of sexual minority men, and like how those essentially how those affect sexual interactions. So I was specifically looking at the relationship between anxiety and sexual arousal to try to get a better sense of why like gay and like non-heterosexual men are so much likelier to engage in what's called like high-risk sexual behaviors, so like condomless sex and like like anal sex with multiple partners and unprotected sex, and so that was what I was
just kind of looking. That's extremely fascinating. Every time someone tells me their senior research, be it psych or anything, I'm always like, this sounds like the next big like academic paper or whatever, which I guess is the hope, right?
Yeah.
That it becomes this big thing. I know in Frank McAndrew's class, we looked at an article that was written by a Knox student as like one of our article assignments, which is really cool. So who knows, maybe your final will be put into one of those. I mean, it's got to be weird being a senior.
Oh,
I mean,
it's very strange. It feels like I'm floating through reality. That was how a friend of mine described it, and I really like that description.
Floating through reality?
Just like, it just feels very weird.
Very weird.
You'll understand when
here. I get to that point. How has Knox changed in that time?
How has the school changed?
The school changed, because when I asked Josh, that's all he brought up was the calf, really. So
basic. No, literally, that was the first thing I thought of. I feel like Knox has gotten stricter about rules over these years, and that was the seniors I knew as a freshman said the same thing. That so it seems we're sort of on that trend. Or at least there's a perception of that.
I know, at least for Flunk Day, that's very much the case, because last year, like, there apparently was this tradition of, like, the mud pit.
Yeah, and that's finally died. That was still hanging in there my freshman and sophomore years, the mud pit tradition, and which has there been one dug up this year?
I don't think so.
Okay, because they were still digging mud pits like my freshman and sophomore year.
Last year I know it didn't happen.
Yeah, so that was, I guess, the last year's my sophomore year.
Depending on the weather, we might just.
But in the like several years before, when it was like a really like established tradition, it would be like this massive mud pit in like the center of the quads. My professor who went to Knox was just describing this to me, and like people would be swimming in this mud and like be entirely coated in it, and then drunk out of their minds, and then like doing stupid shit that really destroyed things at Knox. So like the example she gave was people like throwing their clothes like caked in mud like into washing machines, and then like turning them on and then ruining the washing machines. And so stuff like that, and like just destroying like campus buildings. Because I don't think, because now for Flunk Day, like all the main buildings are like locked. But I don't think that was always the case.
Which makes sense. I think
it's smart.
I think it's smart, and especially with the mud pit, because I had heard stories of like glass would get it.
Oh
like,
yeah,
you know,
glass poop and pee.
Yeah, which is disgusting.
Swimming in that.
Yeah, no, that's one thing.
What a fun tradition.
Yeah, what a fun tradition indeed. Yeah, I guess that makes sense that things, because I think that's kind of as a society where we're going, things are kind of getting more and more safe or strict, as it were, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
But that could also, like you said, just be a perception thing, right? Because the old stereotype of like, well, back in my day, you know, we could walk the streets and we'd all be safe.
If you were white.
Like also, you know, we didn't have the internet back then, so we didn't hear about all the horrible things that would happen, you know. It's interesting talking to seniors, kind of hearing the perception that they have compared to, like, I guess the freshman or younger perception of the college. I find that really fascinating. I mean, to go into another thing you've done while at Knox, I know you aren't this year, but in previous years, or at the very least last year, you were an RA.
Yes. Yeah.
What did that look like for you?
I loved it the first year I did it. I had freshmen that year, and I was really close to a lot of them. And I still like keep in touch with some of them. And like I don't think we would have really met if I hadn't been their RA. So yeah, like literally just this weekend, like one of them invited me to like a party they were having. We like were catching up. It was like, and it was great to like see how much they had, you know, blossomed during their time here. And yeah, that was very rewarding and enjoyable. My second year doing it, I just shouldn't have done it a second year. I had mostly like upperclassmen, and it was a very like difficult year for me. So like I know I was saying like kind of every year has gotten better, but I don't know if that's really true, because like junior year was really hard, and I just had like way too much going on, because I was like you know, considering I hadn't taken a single psych class until like spring term of my sophomore year, I was pretty far behind most of like the other psych majors, and I was still trying to get like a double major, so I was like taking like all these psych classes, which were much higher workload than like the music classes I'd been taking, and like I was very overworked. I was very depressed, and I was very I just didn't have any energy to like interact with people, so like I didn't get close to like any of my residents, which is I don't know, it's up for debate whether that was my fault or like the fault of mental illness or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter who could take the blame. But yeah, I feel bad about that, because I think a lot of them would have liked to like have a chance to get close to their RA or to get close to me, but I wasn't like emotionally available for it. So I just shouldn't have been an RA.
And you chose not to be this year.
Yeah.
Which
was a good choice.
Is a good choice.
Yeah.
I was surprised to learn that like RAs are like, especially here, are like severely underpaid.
Yeah, and overworked.
Yeah, like
it's a brutal combination.
Because you know, I won't say names because I don't know who listens to who their boss might be listening, but I've heard RAs talk about how like other colleges, like they don't just get like money off on their
room and board.
They get room and board just free.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't get that here. You kidding?
You get like 25 cents and like a pat on the back.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous.
And even then, those RAs aren't even doing the full duty thing. Like the ones who in other colleges just get free room and board. It's like, you know, RAs they work Taylor now this year.
Which is so ridiculous. Like no chance in hell I was doing that.
It's just so bizarre, all the things they make them do. So smart move on your part.
Yes, I agree.
And it's definitely sealed the deal on me, like hearing about all that, like of not wanting to be an RA. Because some people are like, "Oh, you should do it," and I'm like,
No.
It's like I feel like it take up a lot of my time, and I wouldn't want to do it. Yeah, like when I could be focusing on academics, that I do here, this little like passion project of mine, or improv or whatever it is, to be able to focus on that is a much greater thing. And to me, I think moving forward with my own life and hearing some of the things you said, like how your focuses have changed. You know, you were doing theater and choir at the beginning, and then you found your passion in music, and then you kind of lost it for that horrible year, and then got it back.
The dark time.
Yeah, the dark time, as it were. I've really enjoyed interviewing you.
Thank you.
And we might be approaching the end of this interview
now. That's fine.
But there is a question I always ask at the end of every guest I ever have, and that is, if you could say one thing to a future you listening to this, or just anyone who might be passing by listening to this, what would you want to tell them? It's a big question. It doesn't have to be super serious. Frank McAndrews said, don't sweat the petty things and don't pet the sweaty things. That's what Frank McAndrews said. So, you know, but sometimes it's deep.
Like, I don't know if this would apply to just any random passing person, but to my future self and people who are like, you know, like emotionally volatile and fragile like me, I would just say, like, you are not important enough for everyone to hate you, and you are good at things, you are loved. Yeah, you are worthy.
You are worthy.
That's what I'd say.
You are worthy. Yeah. No, but I think it's a very true thing. You are worthy. You are valued. All that sort of thing. Well, thank you for being on the show with me. I really do appreciate it. I always enjoy doing this. So
good. Yeah.
So this has been The Big Picture with WVKC, the voice of Knox, 90.7 HD2 Galesburg. And this has been my interview with Alex Kellog. Hopefully you all can meet her someday. She's a very wonderful person. But if not, hopefully this little about an hour segment, around an hour segment will be enough for you to maybe get something out of it. So that's that. Goodbye, everyone.